Without strictly saying so, DC has acknowledged the fact that, should they choose to, none of this never needs to be revisited again. And the effect that that has on this film is a sort of kitchen sink mentality of stuffing in every possible Easter egg they can in the hopes of getting brownie points with the fanboys. So, in theory, something like that would work. As a self-professed DC Comics fan, it is cool seeing the various circular multiverses in orbit around each other, a la Crisis on Infinite Earths. But it's also a squandering of that very image and the immaculate Flashpoint comic book storyline on something so pedestrian as this film, because it'll probably never be adapted again.
This is God.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode 12. After a much-deserved 2-week hiatus, we're back. For those of you who don't know who we are or what we do here at Theater and Stream, or you just need a refresher, first up we're going to be talking about all of the relevant movie industry news of the week. Then we're going to move on to the Watchlist, where we discuss what films and TV we've been watching. Next up will be this episode's featured review, which is going to be a deep dive into the beleaguered DCEU film, The Flash. And finally, we'll close out the show with the Mentionable, where we recommend one non-film related thing from this week, and the pick of the week, where we make that sometimes easy, sometimes hard choice of picking the one single piece of media you should seek out above all others. You're going to find timestamps for jumping around the episode in the description below. And if you're listening to us on podcast services, throw us a rating so we know how we're doing. And if you're watching us here on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Big thanks to all the new subscribers that we picked up in the wake of our Succession finale. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to check out last week's mini-sode, where Chuck and I talk about all the things that we watched during our break. But that's the business end of the show. Chuck, I'll pass it over to you. Anything else you wanted to mention off the top?
Just that, yeah, with all this time off, we have a pretty banging watch list this week. There's a lot going on there. And it is good to be back in the swing of things, though. Back in the chair. That mini-sode was fun to do. But as per usual, I make something that's supposed to be a vacation more work than it has to be. Hang on a second here. I'm paranoid about something. Okay. For a second there, I thought my mic wasn't working. That's the rust showing. But we're back. But someone who will not be joining us, and as we kind of discussed, beforehand, it's like, wait a minute, who? Who's not going to be with us any longer? It's our boy Treat Williams, who you would probably know from television. The man was on everything. He showed up as the bad guy in the 90s Phantom movie with Billy Zane. And that's really my frame of reference for him, if I'm honest. It's like when I think of him in that movie. But he died very tragically in a motorcycle accident, and I guess I just wanted to, shout out the fact that he existed. He was one of those guys. And he was very useful to the Hallmark Channel and, made for TV movies. He was just a dependable working's man's actor. He wasn't a movie star. He was like what was he in? Like he was in that Stephen Sommer horror submarine movie. He was in that. He was kind of like a prototype for the lead character in The Mummy, played by Brendan Fraser. that sort of like
Sure,
swashbuckling action hero. So yeah, one of those dudes. He'll be missed, but yeah, I can't think of the last thing I saw him in.
Well, I'll tell you what it is probably because I was looking through his credits and I figured out the only thing I think I've ever seen him in was he had a small role in Once Upon a Time in America, the Sergio Leone movie.
No shit.
And then, yeah, and then more recently, he was actually in We Own This City, the David
right.
Simon show.
That's
so
right.
that's
Okay.
probably one of the only ththings or the only two things I've ever seen him in.
Apparently, he wore lots of doctor coats.
Yeah, looks like it.
Elsewhere in news, though, something really shisty happened with Netflix, from what I understand. This whole will they, won't they, with password sharing going away, they're finally just kind of like soft rolled it out. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I think most people by now have gotten the message that pops up when you open your Netflix app. I got it last week, and so I had to make the decision to get my own account. So I was one of the 200,000 people.
Damn, that's too bad, man. You know, yeah, welcome. It's the $20 a month really hits hard when you realize how little you watch it. At least in my case, but British Baking Show, got to keep it around. So a lot of other people made that call, and there's been a lot of, I guess, articles kind of written about it. But is the theme basically that Netflix has won? You just have to wait out the customer base, and eventually they'll just give in and come back to you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, basically, there was a lot of people who thought, Netflix was going to have to backpedal because when they did eventually roll this out, that they were just going to have mass unsubscribes. But it's actually worked pretty much in reverse, where on May 26th and 27th, I believe, they had like the two single biggest days for new subscribers in their history, like
Whoa.
bigger than COVID lockdown, bigger than when they first launched the streaming service. And so yeah, they won basically. That's the end of it.
Some fucking accountant is just like sitting there smoking a cigarette and is just so fucking satisfied because he's been saying probably for years, motherfuckers, we are leaving so much money on the table, we have to do this. And this person was told no repeatedly. We can't do that. We'll lose everyone. He's like, no, you won't. I know these fucking people. It's like that meme from Dodgeball where it's like, I know you. Like, you know you, I know you. Like, that's kind of what was happening this whole time. It's just like with Reddit and their little blackout. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah. Like nothing that the web activist set is really hoped would come from these things is really going to happen. The mega corps will always win. This is a very boring dystopia, after all. So they're forcing us to pay for Netflix. Is Disney going to do the same? Is HBO going to do the same? Is this the new normal now?
Oh God, I would hope not, because I mean, especially in Disney's case, because they were the ones who were poking fun at this behavior on Twitter, where they did a they linked that old tweet that everybody's seen by now where Valentine's Day 2017, the Netflix CEO made that tweet that was like, love is sharing your Netflix password or whatever. And they actually, like, some Spacey social media person for Disney linked that tweet and then said, like, you will never have to do this with your Disney Plus account or whatever. And so I hope they don't do that, because that would be an extreme about face.
It would be. And yeah, it's very easy to be cute and snarky, like in the present. But yeah, eventually, just like with Netflix, time comes at you fast, and that might, age pretty poorly too eventually. So we all got to make decisions. Inflation is happening. We might have another bank failure tomorrow. Who the fuck knows? But you got to be able to get the latest streaming content. Speaking of Netflix, one of their old boys, the men who built the house of Sarandos, or like whatever it is, or like Reed Hastings. Kevin Spacey actually came out and did an interview with some bizarre Eurotrash rag that, like, the website is in Cyrillic, but the article itself is in English. It's a very strange thing, but he's coming out and just like blasting everybody, flashing that little ring of his on his pinky that has the conspiracy people all freaked out. And the article is really cool though, because he actually talks about the making of those videos and what his thoughts are about them and the reaction to them. Did you read the article that this was sourced from Variety?
No, I just read the
Yeah.
Variety, the piece about the article.
Read the actual article if you got the time. It's fascinating because oh crap, I left a Sean Penn graphic in there. but yeah, it's like the story here is Spacey, because like there's all these great photos of him walking his dog, taking him to dog parks and drinking espresso and doing shit like that, like just being a complete creep and a weirdo. Like we know that there's something wrong with you, dude, but you're just acting like there isn't. Like they mention how his victims have conveniently his alleged victims have conveniently died before trial and everything. But the whole point about this is that he's ready to work. He will take whatever work he can get, and apparently a lot of people love them some Kevin Spacey, and will like email him and send him letters to let him know that, because his ego is just euphoric and on fire based on this article.
Yeah, have you ever seen you've seen like his YouTube video? He's like where I don't know what he's like cooking or something, and he's like pretending to be Frank Underwood, even though by that point he had been canned, and it's very creepy. And at least he's not doing shit like that anymore, because that was such a weird time for him. And it almost seems like the one thing I will give him credit for is he seems to have cooled a bit on all this stuff, where there's a quote from the article where he's like, I'm not looking to get revenge. I'm not looking to, get payback. I just want to get back to work, essentially, if he wins all of his cases. And, at this point, things are actually looking good for him, because he won his $40 million civil suit. And then, of course, one of his other accusers died, and then another one of his accusers, I'm pretty sure was probably paid off. I'm pretty sure. I mean, they haven't said anything publicly, but I'm pretty sure they were paid off. And so, yeah, I'm not really sure where everything stands with his final court case that he has coming up at I think the end of June, I believe. But yeah, he seems to be taking everything in stride, and I guess we'll see if we see more of Kevin Spacey. I think that honestly, even if he wins everything and everything goes away, I don't think that the big Hollywood people are going to be able to admit even the possibility that maybe they could have been wrong, whether or not he, did these things or not. And so I think we're destined to get more Kevin Spacey animated films and Kevin Spacey Euro trash and Kevin Spacey straight to DVD garbage. I don't think he's ever going to be in the types of films he was in before.
Yeah, Ridley Scott literally reshot a movie just to not have him in it anymore. And I think, that just kind of puts it, like pretty clearly. If people knew about his proclivities and the allegations, for like the whole time that he was lording over Hollywood and at the old Vic Theater, the stuff that was going on behind the scenes at Netflix was pretty egregious. So yeah, I don't like those people telling him that, oh, Netflix was really unfair to you. At that point in time in history, I don't think that that's possible. If anything, they were restrained, even with what they did with wiping him from from their platform, pretty much altogether. Because when was the last time you saw a Kevin Spacey starring movie prominently displayed in the back catalog of a streaming platform? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, God, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe I feel like The Usual Suspects is a movie that makes its way around quite a bit. That's one of those movies that gets like passed around to every streaming service depending on what month of the year it is, it seems like. So I don't know, maybe something like that where, they just kind of pretend like he's not there or something, but or use some sort of box art that doesn't include him or something like that. But yeah, that was probably the last. But yeah, I think, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, because I think no matter what, he's going to have to work on something because he has to start chipping away at that $31 million that he owes Netflix for his morality clause that he fucked up. So,
Oh shit, for real?
yeah.
So they got like he has a tab that he has owing.
Like, yeah, he violated his morality clause with Netflix for House of Cards, and so he owes them $31 million.
Yikes. So just like a SoundCloud rapper that never delivered a hit but burned through that advance, he's got a tab. God, that sucks. Well, it's the price you pay. There's also a price to be paid for middling awards shows, because Dick Clark Productions bought the Golden Globes. What does this mean? Are they gonna try and give back some gravitas, make us care about this award show again, or is it just gonna go back to being more like lame, middling, another entry in the award season rather than something meaningful?
Well, I mean, honestly, it seems like it's mostly the status quo hasn't changed because what has happened here is Dick Clark Productions, they put on a lot of other award shows. I know they do like the Country Music Awards, and they do the like Billboard Music Awards, and then they also do like the New Year's Rockin' Eve every New Year's. And so they've bought the name to the Golden Globes, and their first order of business was to shut down the HFPA. So the Hollywood Foreign Press Association is done. It's not a thing anymore. That has been dissolved. But what they have done is they're turning this into a for-profit enterprise, and they've hired on all of the HFPA members as employees now, whereas before they were just volunteers for a nonprofit, even though they still, pocketed millions of dollars for like consulting, whatever the fuck that means. They were basically just collecting a paycheck that they weren't doing anything for, basically. But now they are officially employees of Dick Clark Productions, and what that basically means is each one of them is going to be getting a $75,000 a year salary for what did they say? For doing responsibilities that include screening films and TV, participating in the voting process, and creating content for the organization's website and social media. So they're basically getting $75,000 to do like a bunch of bullshit, stuff they were either already doing or just like creating like influencer content.
Yuck. Okay. Yeah. All right. Are they gonna bring the booze back to the ceremony at least? Can people get drunk
yeah,
again?
I hope so.
Because and if they bring back Ricky Gervais to stop be the permanent host, I will watch it every single time because everybody loves a train wreck. But yeah, more power to them, I guess. I mean, it's just the rights to make something terrible. Like look at Disney and how well that's going for them.
Well, it's interesting because like the guy who's the CEO of Dick Clark Productions, he's a guy named Craig Boley, and he gave this quote to I think it was Variety, where he said, "How do you make people accountable?" And this is sort of in reference to all of the shit that the Golden Globes has been going through in the past 2 years with, people finding out about all of their bullshit behind the scenes. But he said, "How do you make people accountable? You transition the organization from a not-for-profit, no accountability, and bad governance to an organization where there is employee-based accountability." And so what do you think about that statement? Do you think that, there is inherently some accountability that comes with being like a salaried employee who is able to be fired? Or do you think it's just kind of, press speak, basically?
It sounds like press speak because it's all bullshit. Because like if you're a board member of a nonprofit, you have even like more fiduciary responsibility than just someone who's just running a company, like who has shareholders. Like there's all kinds of accountability that ideally should be there. But like who exactly are he's saying they're accountable to employees now? Okay, I'll believe it when I see it. All corporations talk like that. Though when the rubber hits the road, HR will feel very differently about who's in charge or whose benefit they exactly should be working for. I don't know. It's hard to say exactly what the priority really is sometimes, about that, whether it's the bottom being the rank and file employees setting the tone for how a company should be, or if it's the people up top. Like the activist set and the executive set often don't align, and who usually wins in your experience when it comes to that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the executives. And at the very least, what we could take from this is that the HFPA is no longer a thing, which was sort of a blight on the Hollywood like critics circles, the critic scene. The HFPA was by far the most made fun of and the most like just completely ragged on. So I'm glad that it's no longer a thing, at least.
Yeah, they were the most like easily flattered and like gamed like awards show ever. Like if you won a Golden Globe, most of the time it was the signal, oh, so you're gonna lose the Oscar, or something like that, because the real game is being played in the other direction. You got these people to fawn over you, but the Academy might think differently. Like David Fincher won Best Director from the Golden Globes and then lost out on the Oscar the last time he was nominated for it, I'm pretty sure. And I just remember him just be acting so smug and like confident and arrogant about it. Especially like even like at like Benjamin Button, he was getting heat even. And there's just this like juice that the Golden Globes give you, but it's not genuine. It's not the real deal like you get from like the SAG awards or like the Guild awards these days. Those carry more weight and heft for determining who's going to win out. And the Golden Globe was always just like the consolation prize. Okay, you won this one, but you're not going to get the one you really care about. Like Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
He's won a Golden Globe. He'll never win an Oscar.
Yeah, not at this point. So
not at this point.
So yeah, I mean it's I think there's some good and bad things with this. And I mean at the very least, like at least I don't know, it's weird that they're being paid to do this, because the one thing to make note of is that Oscar voters are not paid. Emmy voters are not paid. Every other award show, people don't get paid to vote. And so I don't know, there's something icky about that, about like being paid to do that. And everything else is sort of done out of love or out of, because of you love the medium, but this is something that's very different, or it's going to be very different. So we'll see. Yeah,
because like, are they going to have job reviews? They're going to be like, you really didn't, do a good job of selecting, like nominees for this category. So like you're going to have to get those numbers up next year. It just the metrics make no sense. Mm-hmm. Speaking of metrics, have people been watching The Idol? Because there's a lot of conversation online about it. There is. But are we actually watching it? I know we are, but are the people? Who's this for?
Yeah, God, I don't know. I mean, because it doesn't seem to have the sort of Zoomer, like, enticing heft that Euphoria does. And so I don't really know who this is made for. To be completely upfront here, I watched the first episode. I have not watched the second, and I am not planning on watching the second. So that's where we'll start with it. But I'm not sure who this really is for. But it's not for me. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah. See, that's the thing. I am enjoying this almost on a meta-textual level because of everything we know about the drama behind the scenes and the fact that we had this like Amy Seimet's like feminist version of this thing in production and then had it completely thrown out so The Weeknd and Sam Levinson could just perv out for like 8 episodes. And because like there's that whole thing in the first episode where they take that mewling little like intimacy coordinator and just lock him in the bathroom so they can just whip the tits out, without someone going, well, we need to assign a new writer, we'd have to get the lawyers involved. It's like, motherfucker, come on. It's like, she's totally consenting to this. Are you kidding me? She's not being pressured. She wants to do this. So like there's parts of it where I was like, okay, what are they saying about what was going on behind the scenes. What are they saying about the first version of this show? Because apparently it wasn't Verhoeven enough. Do you get Verhoeven? Do you get the vibes of the satire and the sexual liberation network and the oeuvre of Paul Verhoeven? Do you get that from this show?
No, I mean not at all. I mean, I don't think it's smart enough to, be that. Because the thing about Verhoeven is he's smart. He's a little pervy, but he's also smart. And I don't think Sam Levinson is that. And he threatens to be interesting in the first episode where, I was sort of with the show during that first act of the first episode. If you divide the first episode up into 3 acts, you have that sort of scene at the mansion, you have the scene at the nightclub, and then the nighttime scene at the mansion. And I was with the show a little bit for that first part because I was like, there's something interesting, trying to be said here, but it's getting lost in all the smut and the sex. And I like the Eli Roth character and the Divine character and the Hank Azaria doing an awful accent character. I liked kind of what they were doing as sort of these taking advantage of managers of her, or like these people who are just kind of taking advantage of her in various aspects of her life. And so, I thought it was a little interesting what they were doing, but then I don't know, it just, if people don't know, the first episode of this show, the main sort of thrust of the plot is not letting this pop star see a picture of herself with jizz on her face. And
that
so,
some guy has just leaked out.
Yeah, and so it's like, I don't know. It gets worse as it goes on because God, once The Weeknd shows up, he is just a black hole of charisma and bad acting, and he's not doing anything interesting. And I think this was just a case of, this show is made by him and then this guy named Riza Fahim, and I don't know if you've looked this guy up, but he's one of the creators of the show, and he's known for being a nightclub proprietor in LA, like in real life. And
so the character, this Tedros character,
is probably in some parts based on him.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this is a case of 2 guys who think that their real lives are more interesting than they actually are, and they're sort of adapting that. And what it eventually devolves into is just boring, sex and smut with nothing to say.
Yeah, because let me tell you, like, if based on the second episode, if it's trying to say something, it's basically that you need to give up your free will to a creepy Svengali like character, and then your art will be true and pure, and you can be taken seriously instead of just being a slut shamed Pop Tart. Yeah, the nothing that this show is doing is hitting the ceiling that they think they're bursting through, because they think they are being so radical. Oh my God, who would ever do something like this? Like, who would ever be this transparent about how Hollywood is actually like? Only us. Yeah, I guess so. Sure. Because there's like literally a scene where Tedros and his like little cult are in his nightclub, just like getting high, doing blow, and he is coaching this like young black guy on how to properly like jerk himself off, while all of these people are watching him. And then by the end of the episode, what is clear is that all of these like random side characters in the first episode are all just members of his little cult, and they've all been inserting themselves into this situation to get this pop star into his clutches. And it's like, to what end? So you can just have more drugs and weird sex? Like what else could possibly happen in this show? Like I lasted an episode longer than you. I've seen it. I know that this is not what they think it is. And this will like shock, some and titillate some. But there was nothing that I saw here that was actually interesting. Like, compare this to a show like Swarm that definitely was edgy, definitely had, like provocative imagery in it. but it's actually about something, and it's about things that are genuinely relatable. Only Ariana Grande and Britney Spears could watch this and be like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me." Like Kesha could say that because of like Dr. Luke, but like or whatever their bullshit is. An average, like you watch this if you want to like see some dark twisted fantasy, I guess. This is probably what Kanye West's life is like, but yeah, not entertaining, not entertaining at all. It's just dull and boring and black. There's not a lot of light in this show, and there's just lots of. It's just a really really prolonged music video for the weekend, but there's no good singing in it, because there's not even good music. You would think that at least, like, they keep on bringing Prince up, which fucking pisses me off, because it's like, you're not fucking Prince, dude. You're not. Like, Purple Rain is not a very good movie, but it doesn't matter because that music is so good. That's not the case here. We don't even have that as a redeeming quality to hold on to. But yeah, not coming back for this.
Yeah, same. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna watch anymore, I don't think. But I do want to separate, because I this show is hilarious to go on like IMDb and look at the reviews for, because I think it has like a 4.3 rating right now, and I want to kind of separate myself from the pearl clutchers, because I do think, I'm not offended by this show. I am not offended by the nudity and the sex and stuff. And I do think there is a place in this world for Sam Levinson, I think. And what that place is basically, if I would have been like from the age like 18 to like 22 when this show came out, I probably would have ate this shit up. Like, just analyzing it and thinking it's like way cooler than it actually is. But I don't know, I just think it's something you grow out of. Like, I don't know, like something like Troy Duffy, or like a Serbian film. I don't know if you've ever seen a Serbian film, but that's like something that people like definitely grow out of. That like people, film fans in their early 20s are like, this is so fucking gnarly, and like this is great, and it's one of those things you grow out of.
Sidebar about that, just because someone on the True Film subreddit popped up there to be like, hey guys, is there something redeeming about a Serbian film? Like, what can I get out of this? And some dude popped into the thread. I'll have to just send this to you because it's interesting. But this guy had this like super fucking detailed like cultural deep dive on the history of the filmmakers and the screenwriters and the kinds of films they were making. And really what that movie was making fun of was Euro trash film financiers coming to Serbia to only make certain kinds of movies. So they were like inverting that kind of expectation and going, I don't know, it's a fascinating thing, because even those dudes are like, they're capable of taking something like you're kind of pointing out. Like it has deep resonance to people who don't understand it for no good reason. Because I feel like there is something probably to understand about a Serbian film. I don't think that's the case here. Because until we get to the end and they reveal some transcendent hours of television, because a lot of people really hype up that second season of Euphoria, even though I can only get through about 15 minutes of that show before I turn it off and wait another 4 months before coming back to it. Like I haven't even watched his movies, but like what else can Sam Levinson give us beyond this really slick shit that incorporates famous people that young people care about? It has that K-pop star. It has The Weeknd in it. It has Lily Rose Depp really stepping outside her, wheelhouse from Yoga Hosers. But like, what else can he give us beyond just working with famous people and then making really, really uneven art in the process?
I don't know. I mean, I think that at this point, this is kind of just his thing. Like he's found his sort of place or his rut in society, and I think this is what he makes from now on, because he used to make movies that were halfway decent or halfway interesting, like Assassination Nation or like What Just Happened. I think I believe he was a writer for. And now he's found his thing, and this is what he's going to do, forever at this point.
And I guess God bless him. He's getting a lot of content for the Mr. Skin crowd at the very least. Yeah. But speaking of people who have like really fucking found their thing, apparently, it's the Russo brothers and their little coterie of actors and stunt guys. Because I haven't seen the first Extraction movie. I'm just going to say that up front. But this one, I was in it because of the trailer, and I was in it. I stayed up way too late last night to watch this thing all the way through, because that first 45 minutes of Extraction 2 is phenomenal. At least I thought so. But overall, what is this neat little addition into action moviedom? Is this like a new guy? This Jake Tyler character, is he like the Rambo for the 21st century?
No, it's Tyler Rake.
Tyler
is
Rake,
his
that's
name.
what it is. Yeah.
And yeah, it's so strange because he was dead at the end of the first movie, like clearly dead. Like he had been shot like 10 times, and then he fell into like the Ganges River in India and like
Oh,
floated away. And so
guaranteed infections.
yeah. And so yeah, he was pretty dead. But then of course they decided to make this one because the first was so successful. And I don't know. I think these movies, what they are, they're an excuse to put on elaborate stunt shows, basically, because the director Sam Hargrave, he comes from that school of stuntmen turned filmmakers, and it's kind of just about outdoing yourself, outdoing what you did before. And I don't think it ever gets as interesting as that big prison action set piece from the beginning. But I thought it was, as far as the Russo brothers like producing projects go, I think this is probably the most interesting of any of them.
I just kind of dug the format and just the idea. Like, you could make these movies forever, like that kind of purity to what it, as long as you keep making awesome scenarios, keep one-upping yourself. Because I was kind of reminded of like going from, even though I haven't seen the first one, but it just reminded me of the Raid 2 Burundal, the even though that movie was more interesting narratively than this one was for me, but I didn't care because I didn't have the context. I was just along for the ride, and my takeaway was I wish I had seen this in a theater, and I would probably watch one of these every 2 or 3 years, without complaint, as long as they keep giving me shit like this. This was rad.
Yeah, it was. It was really, really well done action. And, unfortunately, there are those scenes in between the action where the film has to slow down and
true.
try and make you care, even though you really don't give a shit. But all the action stuff is really, really great. And, there's multiple like standout scenes, in this film. Like, yeah, that one there where he's fights the helicopter with like the minigun, and the tower like raid scene where they've got guys on the roof and then guys at the ground level. And unfortunately, I do think it does kind of lose steam towards the end, because that sort of final church sequence really does not do anything that the first hour and a half of this movie doesn't do better. And but yeah, this was a decent action film, and it doesn't have that like signature Netflix like cheapness to it, that most Netflix action movies do have. It seems like they actually, give this the money that it deserves, gives this the budget and the time to work on the effects that it deserves. So yeah, all around, decent movie.
Did they use drones to do some of the impossible photography, or is that just all computer trickery?
I think they did. Yeah, I think they do. They used like dollies and steady cams, and then what they'll do is there's some really neat behind the scenes stuff about this movie on YouTube already, and they sort of pass the camera off to other people.
That's what I mean. That's what they did in the Raid 2. They pioneered this shit. Where
they'll hook a camera onto a drone. Like they have like these, sort of these invented proprietary like drone cameras where a guy will hand off the camera to like a drone rig, and then the drone will take it for a bit, and then it'll drop the camera. So yeah, it's really, really cool, some of the stuff they're doing. And yeah, Very interesting. And the one thing I did want to mention too was, for some reason, Idris Elba shows up as like the handler,
Yeah.
and he's not in the first one at all. And I think this was sort of one of those cases of being in the right place at the right time, because I'm pretty sure I haven't done I haven't done the entire all the math to figure this out for sure, but I'm pretty sure that the reason why they got Idris Elba to be in this movie is because he was in Poland doing the Cyberpunk 2077 expansion
Woo!
at the same time that this was filming. So I think
Phantom
that's kind of
Liberty.
yeah, I think that's kind of what happened here. Is they were probably filming near each other, and they're like, "Hey, want to come be in our movie?"
Kind of
So
like
that's
Sandra
kind of
Bullock
cool.
being in Bullet Train.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Goddamn. Because yeah, he is just kind of he's just there. But this just feels like because this is the John Wickification of action movies. You gotta have the cool black dude to show up and talk to the white protagonist. We gotta get a black lead in some of these movies at some point. What's going on here? Isn't that the whole point, Hollywood? Aren't we having racial quotas for a reason? I love this sequence though. The Reaper team, they
Yeah.
act like that was actually like fucking scary. Like
Hmm.
like I said, stayed up way too late because like I
Yeah.
figured I was gonna just try it out and see if I was interested enough to wake up early and watch it. But I finished it. It was worth it. But yeah, not the best thing ever narratively. Just like turn your brain off. That's why like it reminded me of like a Schwarzenegger movie, even though those movies were more fun, and more lighthearted. I still like this was like such a cornball movie. There were some lines in this where I laughed because they were so like not landing like they thought they were. Like where he makes some pithy comment and she's like, "Was that supposed to be funny?" As they're like driving in a chase sequence, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I guess it was supposed to be, but yeah, it clearly wasn't. I agree with you, but the other line of like yeah, those men are coming. The sheep, the shepherds are coming. They're dangerous men. And he's like, I'm a dangerous man. After he literally murdered his way out of a prison. I don't know. It seems to lack self-awareness.
A little bit.
A
Yeah,
little bit.
definitely.
But maybe I don't know. That's the Russo brothers because they wrote the graphic novel that this is based on. Is that correct?
You might be right there. I did see. Yeah, it is based on a graphic novel. I'm not sure. Yeah, who did it, but
They're not.
yeah, that's
They're not punching that dialogue up. They're just keeping it where it is.
pretty much. Yeah. So and yeah, be prepared to get more, because if the ending is any indication, there will be more.
He will be back. He will be back. So because it's June, we're in the midst of June. It's Pride Month, and I decided to keep things spicy and watch What Is a Woman because Twitter decided to say, "Hey, feature-length films come to our platform." And this is not something I'd ever seek out. I'm not on the Daily Wire. I don't give them my money, so I was like, "Oh, they're gonna give it to me for free. I'll see what the controversy is about." And I was also interested because our friend Dallas Saunier, the former Cinestate and Fangoria owner, the producer of films like Bone Tomahawk and Dragged Across Concrete, he's a producer on this as well because he is now working for the Daily Wire as their like content shepherd. He did Run Hide Fight for them as well, and then he partnered up with Matt Walsh to make this very it's disingenuous in the same way that Michael Moore is, because it's just putting him on camera in front of people who don't really know a lot about him and usually know a great deal about what they're talking about but are being set up to fail, because he is guiding them to a moment where he's going to throw a gotcha question at them, and the gotcha question is the title of the movie. So I'm not going to get into the merits of the movie's arguments, but purely just as a documentary itself, it's very polished. It has all the things one would expect from a mainline documentary. It just has some very fraught and challenging moments as things slowly get more antagonistic. So if you view it more so as an exploration of how people talk and argue and debate, or don't, depending on the situation and the people involved, it's interesting. If you want to see that and just kind of see some of the failings of how we as people interact. But yeah, at the same time, I wish he could just be upfront. Like I think there is something lost, and it's a failing on the part of any documentarian who does this. If you're going to be antagonistic to someone you're interviewing, be open about it. Don't hide behind a pretense of, political correctness or civility that may not be there. And like, you know what I mean? And so on that level, I kind of chide him because he's getting what he wants. He's getting the slop he wants for his crowd. But I doubt that anyone who disagreed with him would watch this and feel like he was being fair. So, but then that's the movie. How is Twitter as a streaming platform? It sucks. The quality, just kind of spikes. You'll go from 1080p to like cell phone footage from the year 2002. It just is horrid as an experience, not consistent, and they're gonna have to do a lot of work to make it a place where a filmmaker can just be like, oh, I'm just taking my wares to Twitter now. Like that I would never want Twitter to be the sole streaming representation of my product, given what I've seen.
Yeah, I hope that would never happen, because I would never want. Are they legitimately trying to become like a video hosting site like Twitter?
Yeah, you don't make an appeal like that, because this was something cooked up by Twitter and the Daily Wire in collaboration. So so like this is because Elon Musk, if people don't know this, when he first was one of the founders of PayPal, his desire was to create a singular app that would do all things called X. And a part of his true reasons for buying Twitter was to have a foundation with which to finally achieve that dream of having that one single place that you go for everything: social interaction, streaming content, like your bite-size, Twitter, posting, whatever it is. He wants you your banking. He wants you to bank with Twitter someday. That's and this is part of that quest. If it's pretty transparent. The safety the trust and safety team, didn't quite get the memo, because this movie kept on getting taken up and taken down, which has created controversy, caused a lot more people to watch it, including myself, because it wouldn't have even occurred to me if it hadn't been censored in the first place initially, or like shadow banned, whatever it was. And 200 million people have watched this thing. So maybe I'm wrong, but I think that just speaks more to the hot button issue more than anything else. But I don't know. Like, if you're a lightning rod, a good place to go is Twitter. I think that more so is the lesson to be learned.
Sure.
So what exactly is the Lazarus Project? I saw a trailer for this, but I can't really say that I remember much about it.
Yeah, this is a really weird one, because this is one of those British TV shows that a American company has sort of bought up and are releasing it on their platform. And in this case, the platform is the TV channel TNT, which has absolutely no original content anymore. It's literally just, that TV channel is literally just wrestling, NBA games, and movies now. Like, there is nothing to that channel anymore.
Is the Alienist on there?
It used to be, but that's done. What was it called? What is that show they had that was the adaptation of the Bong Joon-ho movie? Bong Joon-ho. Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Snowpiercer. Yeah, they had a Snowpiercer show that's canceled. Every single one of their original shows has now been canceled, except for this, because I think they picked this up and now they're finally sort of releasing it. And
I've recognized that lead. He was in Men. And he was in I May Destroy You. Okay, really good actor. So
yeah, he's great.
What is this show about?
So yeah, this show it's very interesting. I really like what I've seen so far. I've seen the first 2 episodes, and this is about a guy who can basically, he's like sensitive to time travel basically, and he can sense he keeps reliving the past 6 months of his life, and he doesn't know why. And then one day he is approached by this governmental organization called the Lazarus Project. And what this organization does is they, every time there is a extinction level event on Earth, they monitor it, and then they try and stop it, and when they fail they rewind the clock 6 months basically on the world, the entire world. And so some people are sensitive to it, most people are not. So most people just go about living their lives as normal, and they have no idea that the clock has been, rewound. But the people that aren't are like a part of this organization. And so it's part, it reminds me, it's part devs, it's part primer, and it's part Born Identity. That's kind of what I would describe the show as. And yeah, I really, really like what I've been watching so far. It has like surprisingly a pretty good budget, like the action scenes and like the scenes of the sort of spy thriller scenes are surprisingly like elaborate. And the entire second episode of this show, it's almost a bottle episode in some ways, where the entire second episode are these two agents from the Lazarus Project, who are just, they keep rewinding the clock because they're trying to stop a nuclear missile launch, and they keep failing. And you see like all of their, all the stuff they try and do, all the various routes that they try and take to stop this nuclear missile launch until they finally succeed. And so yeah, this show it's great, but it's incredibly hard to watch because
That's what I was about to say. I don't want to fucking get a TNT.
Yeah, it sucks because the only way to watch it, TNT does not have their own streaming service. So the only way to watch it is if you either have a cable subscription, or you know somebody who has a cable subscription and can log into like their proprietary phone app. And so that's how I watch it. I just I do a Google Chromecast to my TV and then watch it through the TNT app. And but it's really hard to watch. Unfortunately, I don't, because this is a British show, it will keep getting made because it's a hit in Britain, but nobody's gonna watch it here because it's on fucking TNT. So
yeah, they really fucked up when they sold that. Like, how much did they, like, were they really the best offer? Like, this show should be on Amazon. Like,
totally.
That's where it should be. And then I would watch it in a heartbeat, because that is an amazing little concept. It's just save scumming, for saving the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right on. So, because what I spent my time watching was a lot of true crime documentaries and just documentaries. I watched the Hillsong one just because I was curious, and oh god, that dude is vile. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, this man, that's why he was on my mind when I watched Extraction too, because I just watched all 3 episodes of this, and he's really trying hard to make his The Last Dance. There's a lot of, really, like iconic individuals who saw that treatment and saw how iconic that documentary series was. So they're trying to do the same thing, but this just feels a little like Michael Jordan hid his hand for how much he was controlling the narrative in that. This is just too obvious because there's no other talking heads really. There's some exceptions, but mostly it's just Arnold talking. And a lot of, like, if you watched Pumping Iron, you probably knew a lot of like his whole, rise to, controlling the weightlifting world. But when it comes time to them to like really get into the nitty gritty of his ascendance through movies and politics, they get skimpy. It because like they really gloss over how much of a circus, that recall election was. Like, you could have made an entire movie just about that. They could have had an entire episode just about that. But we only get 3 episodes to, get the full Arnold experience. And while I think you get to know a lot more about his personal life and he gets really vulnerable there, it kind of reminds me more of the Kanye documentary from last year than it does The Last Dance, which is unfortunate. But probably still worth checking out just because it's Arnold. I mean, he's charismatic and he's still got it. And yeah, at least it was worth, like wasting a few hours of my life on.
Yeah,
Um,
I was looking at this and I didn't watch it, but I'm glad that you're saying that because I might seek it out now because I was under the impression that this was like solely made as sort of part of the promotional rollout for his new Netflix show
oh
Fubar, you know,
no,
because they
this
released
it's a little more
they
substantial than that.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
good. Because yeah, I noticed they released them at the same time, so I was like, oh, this is just like an ad for him being in a Netflix
No, they
series.
get like, James Cameron actually sits down and talks quite a bit in front of the camera, and that's
Mm.
really cool because, like, I don't know, he tells some, fun Hollywood stories that I hadn't heard before about Arnold and his relationship with him. And yeah, and the stuff about him talking about his childhood, that's, and like his mother, and the way his father, like sort of like fucked with him, like not like in a bad way, but just in, he gave his older brother more affection and attention, and that's what made Arnold into the complete like driven motherfucker that he is. And so I don't know, it's worth it on that level. But but now that I know that there is that association, it does kind of just have that made for TV quality, as opposed to a let's make something really fucking cool and transcendent. It's pretty paint by numbers. But what was not paint by numbers was shiny happy people or smiling happy people. I can't remember what the exact title of this is, but it's about the Duggar family and by extension the whole IBLP, evangelical homeschooling movement. And as someone who has listened to Natalie Jean Zabrowski's podcast, somewhere, something underneath her, I think is what it's called. She does a multi-part expose about this, and I found myself just kind of going like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I already knew this," or okay, yeah, like a lot of this just seems like old news. And if there is anything that is like really laid bare and revealing, it's, just in recontextualizing the past with, what is true and known today. But this, it kind of gets like caught up a little bit in trying to skewer like the whole quiverful movement and other, like evangelical movements. It gets lost in the weeds and the sauce a little bit, and loses focus from the Duggars specifically to like the larger, like systems and incultations that are going on amongst other people. Because yeah, they were promoting a lifestyle, and there probably were some people who slipped into this lifestyle because the show put it out there and put it in front of them. But I I defy anybody in the present to look back on this show and not see how fucking creepy it was, to not see how disingenuous and fucked everything about it was from the word go. I don't know how you could have been a camera person on this show and not have known that something dark and awful was happening in that home. Like, and they're just skeezy. Jim Bob Duggar is the most skeezy motherfucker ever. Just in the terms that, like, he would, like, trick his children into signing contracts, locking them in to have to be on the show and to get no money for it. Like, it's unconscionable. Hey, November. You want to go to the park?
I'm not really that familiar with this story, so
Okay.
would you recommend it as I mean, I know who they are, but
Yeah.
would you recommend it as like somebody who doesn't know the sort of sequence of events? Would
Yes.
you recommend watching
It's
it?
very
Yeah? Okay.
informative. Like, in all the ways that the Arnold documentary was just kind of surface level, like at times where you wish it wasn't, this one goes deep. Like, they're like, here is the pamphlet from the brochure at the event that, first popularized this concept that the Duggars believed in and advocated for. And then here is the fucked up history of the guy who created that, that pamphlet. So and they have like cool testimonials from children who were raised in households similar. And yeah, like you really get a sense for the human damage behind the scenes of the show. And if you don't know a lot about the show in general, you'll know everything there is to know by the end of watching it. Hang on, honey. I need
Okay.
my hand to turn
Check it out.
the mouse and switch. Because now the time's come to talk about the main event. Matt, take it away.
Yes, so The Flash. Along with this August's Blue Beetle and December's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, The Flash feels like the vegetables that we have to eat before moving on to the dessert of the new DC universe. To me, The Flash is the worst kind of comic book film where almost every possible moment of triumph or of sadness or of elation and badassery is undercut by awful, unfunny jokes and gags. I found it almost impossible to feel anything but cringing disgust as every emotion is usurped by a series of comedic misses. So it's kind of good news then that none of this really matters, because without strictly saying so, DC has acknowledged the fact that, should they choose to, none of this never needs to be revisited again. And the effect that that has on this film is a sort of kitchen sink mentality of stuffing in every possible Easter egg they can in the hopes of getting brownie points with the fanboys. So, in theory, something like that would work. As a self-professed DC Comics fan, it is cool seeing the various circular multiverses in orbit around each other, a la Crisis on Infinite Earths. But it's also a squandering of that very image and the immaculate Flashpoint comic book storyline on something so pedestrian as this film, because it'll probably never be adapted again. And I don't know, I feel like there is exactly one moment in this film that worked for me, which we'll get to eventually. But Chuck, what did you think of The Flash?
You know, your indictments are very fair, because I had to rein my fanboy in here and there, because I had to be like, wait, this looks really chintzy, or oh dear God, why does it look so bad, or why is he wearing such an obvious wig and beard? Why can't Michael Keaton just be himself? But look at that, it's the Batcave. Oh, they're playing the music. Eventually, the magic stops working. The nostalgia, stops hitting right, because I remember, oh yeah, I am watching a lesser version of a more worthy story, and I didn't care for the dual character of the Flash, even though I will say I appreciated who the actual villain of the movie was. Because I kind of feel like this is in conflict with the Lazarus Project. There's very different philosophical undertones about what you do or not mess with in history, or the spaghetti, the constant spaghetti metaphor. Was that just for the sake of being goofy?
I guess, I don't know, it's almost as if they were like, okay, this next scene is going to be set in the Wayne Manor kitchen, so we need to come up with some sort of metaphor around food, because we need Michael Keaton to be eating food.
And the Flash is always eating food, right? So yeah, he just makes spaghetti. Yeah. Goddamn.
Yeah, it's, man, it's, I don't even know where to start after that sort of introduction, but I guess, let's start with the effects, since you brought it up.
Yeah.
So a lot of lip service has been paid to the effects of this film at this point, because people have put, cam rips of Indian showings from Indian movie theaters of this movie online that show how terrible some of the effects are. And I guess the place to start is that sort of, what I can't remember the name that they give for it in this film, but it's basically the Flash's time travel pantheon thing, where
what the fuck did they call it?
It was the brain drip pan or something like that. It was something stupid. He says it once, I think, in the film, and then never says it again. But it's basically the place that the Flash goes to choose where he wants to time travel to, and every single person in that has this weird uncanny valley PS3 graphics look to them. And Andy Muschietti has already gotten out there and said, oh, this was a creative choice, I did this on purpose and stuff. But I don't know. I think that's a good place to start because the effects in this movie are truly awful, and even extended beyond those scenes. Like the weird sort of desolate like desert fight, like the battlefield that they fight on in the end, it's just like a wasteland. And I know they're trying to copy like Zack Snyder's um the look of Zack Snyder's film because they're, fighting in the same place where, they were fighting in that film in Man of Steel. And but it looks so different. It looks so much shittier than a movie that was made literally 10 years ago. So,
Well, and
yeah.
they could have had that final battle happen in Metropolis again. Why not just
Mhm.
do that? That
Yeah.
was way cooler. Like then we could have had people getting punched through skyscrapers again. Like, think about all the dead civilians. But the whole point is that it's multiverse bullshit. This universe never happened anyway. It's all just gonna get, shaken out in the wash whenever they reset the continuity here. But I guess let's talk about, you brought up Snyder.
Mm.
Is this a final like 21 gun salute to Snyder? Is that what this was supposed to be? Or was this supposed to be like, ha ha ha, you want more Snyderverse? Well, here, you can have it. But look, chick Superman now. Suck it, fanboys. Like, were they just being vindictive? Or is this actually like a good way of them to use the leftovers in the fridge to, microwave a meal for all of us?
I don't think they were planning, I don't think they're planning on like, doing anything to dunk on Zack Snyder, like specifically, but I think it was just a case of like, okay, we've got, the Flash time travels a lot in his, comic book stories, and we need to come up with a place for him to time travel to, but then we also need to somehow tie it to our future movies. Should we want to return to this, or should we want to tie this to James Gunn's new DC universe? So it's just kind of a case of like trying to tie this to so many things at once and trying to predict for the future and try to plan for the future, and they want to have everything, and it's just kind of a mess in that way because I don't think that Andy Muschietti or any of the creatives on this film have any sort of special relation to Zack Snyder, and I don't think they're trying to like, like give him the final like farewell or anything like that. I think they were just using it as a means to an end.
Like, they're just working with what they had, basically.
Pretty much.
They're like,
Yeah.
okay, like, if Ryan Johnson hadn't just gone, oh, okay, and just like thrown everything over his shoulder, like he actually had used whatever J.J. Abrams had given him, with Star Wars. Because with this, the vibe is just off because like how many false starts did this movie have? How many times? Like how long has it actually been in production?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, the movie has been, from what I understand, it's been done for 2 years. Like they've had it in the can for 2 years, and then
Holy
it got,
shit!
like delayed and delayed. But the weird thing is, and I really hope that this eventually comes out, but there's stuff in this movie that was filmed literally as like recent as like 2 or 3 months ago. Like one thing we know at this point that was the George Clooney cameo. That was filmed literally months ago, like 60 days ago. That was filmed, and
Yeah,
it's because they really changed Michael Keaton's role in this because originally when before James Gunn came on board and before James Gunn announced all of his plans for the new DC universe, this was supposed to be like the movie that sort of transitioned from like the old to the new stuff, but now they've had to rework everything, and Michael Keaton suddenly doesn't have as big of a role. And Michael Keaton was also going to be in Batgirl too. He was going to be like this universe's Nick Fury, and now they're just like, nope, done.
Dude, that's fucking crazy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So like they had long-term plans for bringing Keaton back.
Hmm.
Damn.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot to talk about with this, and you talked a lot about behind the movie. How do we think about the movie's like story? I know you felt like it was a hollow version of Flashpoint, just because of how much fun that had with its alternate setting and hit and the different kinds of the versions of characters that could be, like Thomas Wayne Batman, for example. Like, why didn't they just do a straight up Flashpoint adaptation? Why did they just make this hodgepodge and try and just come up with their, like, the screenwriters to this, not impressed with. I didn't know who they were before going into this. I don't care to know who they are after, because this was really uninspired, really insipid when you get down to it. When you look at what they had to work with and how little of it they incorporated, it served nothing. All the incessant jokes, all of the dumb fucking opportunities for young Barry to laugh, that awful laugh. I was cringing throughout this fucking movie anytime someone was talking. But that made me really not care about the story at certain points. But then eventually the story doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, to answer your question, I mean, I think it really is just like they could have adapted Flashpoint whole cloth to a movie, and I think it probably would make a pretty good movie, in the future. Say like 10 years from now, had they have saved Flashpoint for a future Flash movie in the James Gunn universe, totally could have worked. But instead, we get this sort of bastardized version of it because, again, like we said before, they had to work it within the confines of the stuff that they already had. And so they take a little bit of Flashpoint from here, and they take a little bit of Zack Snyder from here, and they take a little bit of the, like, even like some Whedon Justice League movie stuff from here, and it kind of creates this amalgam of this thing that doesn't quite work. But yeah, I mean, oh gosh, the actual like storyline as within the confines of the movie, yeah, I mean, it really didn't work because, as I said before, it's like any moment or any time this movie has the opportunity to like give you those sort of feelings of elation, or those feelings of like, oh, what that action scene was really badass, or what just happened was really badass, or anytime there's a sad scene, even for the most part, it just undercuts everything with like a shitty joke, or with of young Barry going, "Oh, ripping, dude," and like it's just awful. And just because you acknowledge that a character is supposed to be annoying, because I think that was the intent. Young Barry is supposed to be immature and annoying and an idiot, but just because you acknowledge that fact doesn't make it good. Just because you're saying like, we're trying to do this, doesn't make it necessarily good. And it's awful.
Like, did his awfulness really scream 2013 to you, though? It felt like timeless in a way. Like, it was just like cringy and annoying for the sake of it. I didn't recognize any memes or like references to the era that would have like placed me there. Like, they always used like universal context clues, like references to the movies from that time. You know what I mean? Like the events of Man of Steel. But you just don't get the sense that, oh, this is actually 2013 here, just based on the way that he's acting. But yeah,
definitely.
But I concede he's supposed to be that way. But does he have to be? You know what I mean? Like that whole scene with his like really gross roommates. Yeah. Why? Why was that there?
Yeah, that was really, really bad. And yeah, that was probably one of the worst scenes in the movie. And yeah, and I mean, none of it even works. Like, he really isn't using any like slang from 2013.
That's what I mean.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really, they're not placing it in the year. And I try and go back and think about, because I think the first time that we ever saw Ezra Miller's Flash was, it was in an after credit scene of some movie. I'm trying to remember what, but I believe it was in the after credit scene of some movie where, Batman was going through like his case files or whatever, and
it was
he was
Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even when you think about Ezra Miller's actual first performance as the Flash in, I think it was Justice League, he was never that annoying. He was never as annoying as like young Barry is in this movie. And so, I mean, even in that sense, they're not being true to the character.
True. There you go.
Hmm.
Yikes. But staying true to the character, was Keaton's Batman in this true to the character? Did they do a good job of transposing Tim Burton Batman into the Snyderverse? Because that's basically what they did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose he was fine. I mean, I don't think he was especially, great or bad. He was just kind of there, honestly. And um I mean, some of the stuff he did was pretty cool. Like, I liked how he had all of his like gadgets, and they were all like fairly grounded for the most part. Like those weird like exploding time bombs that he had, where he could like set like the charge level on them, or relied a lot on batarangs, so he was still like
Yeah.
fairly grounded.
That was pretty
And
cool.
so yeah, I mean, for the most part, I thought he was decent, and they never had him like. I'm so thankful that they never had him say like shitty like jokes for the most part. Of course he has to say his lines like, "You want to get nuts, let's get nuts," and I'm Batman and stuff like that. But you never really had Michael Keaton like spouting off like shitty like 2023 humor. And so I'm thankful for that. And I don't know if that was part of like Michael Keaton's like doing, where maybe they tried to get him to say stuff like that on set, and he was just like, no. He's
Fuck
like,
it.
no, this, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And so yeah, he was fine for the most part. And that's kind of the unfortunate part of this film, is that a lot of the stuff that you thought was going to be awesome, was like completely awesome, was just fine. Like Keaton's Batman, or Michael Shannon's Zod coming back. I mean, just a nothing character, a nothing performance from Zod. Or like Angie, I think, how do you say her name? Angie Trow, her Feora.
Yeah.
She's just there. I don't think she even had a line. She was just there. And yeah.
They just used her likeness and she gets a credit. How based is that,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
God, out of all of the cameos though, which like did any of them really work for you? Like what like I was euphoric watching Nick Cage fight that giant spider. John Peters finally fucking got it, man. It finally happened.
Yeah. That was cool. Yeah, that was cool. I mean, it's at that point the movie is just on that whole like sequence is just like pure like fanboy like dopamine rush sequence, where it's, yeah, just that. And then you have the George Reeves Superman, you have the Christopher Reeves Superman, you have the Supergirl from the Reeves the spin-off of the Reeves movies. Yeah, I mean, it was cool seeing all that. I have to admit. And just seeing the, like I said in my intro, seeing the multiverse as it is in Crisis on Infinite Earths, where it's all represented by these sort of floating, almost like marbles or these orbs.
Almost
And
like a
that was,
zoetrope, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
So yeah.
that gives one hope. But like did they actually give us a multiversal story worthy of the genre? Does it live up, or is it just yet again it's missing the ceiling, that we know is there, especially for the content?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I mean, because you think the problem with adapting these really famous, really awesome comic book storylines is, if you do them badly, then they're probably never going to be done again, or they're going to have to wait
Yeah.
a certain amount of time before they do them again. And unfortunately, because we got Flashpoint in this movie, because we got a sort of bastardized version of Crisis on Infinite Earths in this movie, I don't think we're ever going to get that again, or at least it's going to be like years and years before we ever get that again. And yeah, it's kind of the same reason why it sucks that they used, certain comic book storylines, like Civil War. Take like Marvel Civil War, amazing comic book event series, but they kind of fucked it up for that movie. I mean, that's a decent movie overall, the Captain America Civil War, but it's not the comic book, and now we're never gonna get that ever again.
That is true. Like, because like we're not gonna have the because like what was the comic Civil War actually about, versus what that movie was about, and that movie resolved its whole situation, in 2 hours, and I just can't see them actually like fitting the breadth of that the scope of that series. So I understand why they don't, but yeah, now they're not. I think you're correct about that, and we are gonna miss out on some like really genuinely good, and like stuff that's worthy of it. Like they keep on talking about making the long, like, oh, we're so influenced by the Long Halloween. Yeah, so we're never gonna see like an actual Long Halloween movie, will we? We won't, because it's just the window dressing for what Hollywood does do.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably the case, but
we've been dancing around our boy Ezra Miller. How do we actually feel about his performance in the movie?
It was, I mean, on a technical level, I suppose it was good. Playing two different roles it's probably pretty hard to do, and playing off of literally nothing. You're playing against, there's nothing there probably on set when he's talking to somebody. And so on a technical level, I suppose it is pretty good, but and it's a little weird too. I have to call this out because I couldn't have been the only person thinking about this in the theater, but at the beginning, with all of the shit that Ezra Miller has gone through and all of these crimes he's accused of, they're like, it's weird having him like have like multiple personalities, and with all of like the mental illness he's dealt with, and it's like he's basically playing against himself and he has multiple personalities. And then there's that scene at the beginning when after he saves all the babies and he says to that nurse, this was probably traumatic. Get help at a mental health professional. It's like, this is weird coming from you because you are a fucking basket case of a person and you have these problems. And so all of this stuff with you having multiple personalities and stuff like that, and it's weird. And they probably could have chosen to go a different direction with it, but they didn't.
Did you appreciate his love story with Miss West? Did that work for you?
No,
because she was in the Snyder cut. Was in, and then she actually got to be in this movie. And yeah, was it worth it? Probably not. Because, God, every time she showed up on screen, I was just bored. Because like, what purpose did she serve?
Yeah, that. I have no idea. I guess just to give him some character development or something. But yeah. Well, we are on Ezra Miller. I alluded to it in my introduction, but I do want to say, while we're on the topic of Ezra Miller, the one scene in the film, or the one sort of arc of the film that I thought actually worked, because they didn't resort to the shitty jokes, because they let the scene play out as it should, was all of the stuff having to do with his mom. And the one scene in the film that 100% worked for me was the scene at the end in the grocery store when he has to take the can of tomatoes out of his mom's cart. I think that completely worked. It's the only scene in the film where they actually went for the emotion instead of the cheap joke, and it worked out for me. And from the sniffles that I heard in the theater, it worked out for a lot of the people who were sitting around me. But yeah, I did want to shout that out because I do think that really his performance really sort of shone through at that point too. But
and because that was the whole point of the movie. It's all about the mom, and having to not be the villain of your own story. And then in that level, I did appreciate it, and I appreciated the fact that the bad guy was him. That worked. Like that wasn't cloying, and it was actually like, because as soon as you saw a dark speedster show up, I was like, oh shit, what are they gonna do with that? What are they trying? Are they how far are they really going? Reverse Flash,
yeah.
Kind of, but not really. But what does this actually? Where like that Clooney cameo? What the fuck does it mean? What does it mean? Like, is Clooney gonna be Batman full time now? Is he the Nick Fury of James Gunn's. Is he going to be in like Brave and the Bold?
Yeah, it's a good question. I want to say that they will do something meaningful with this. I want to hope that they will do something meaningful with this, but I just don't think that they're going to. I think, I mean, I think they're just going to, once Blue Beetle is out, once Aquaman is out, I think they're just going to can all of this stuff. They're just going to chalk it up to a loss, and it's just going to be done. But they don't want you to feel that way as of right now, because they want you to keep coming to these final 2 movies that they have coming out. So they're not being explicit, insane. So they're being very careful about how they're talking about this film in the press and how they're talking about the other 2 films in the press. So but I think they're just going to can it all.
Too bad. So Mr. Muschietti is confirmed to be doing The Brave and the Bold, and this is a goodbye to the Snyderverse officially. Like, as if something's getting thrown in the can, it's that. The door has been closed. They have the in-canon event to explain why everything is different. Are they still going to leave Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, here's the thing is, I don't think, I mean, other than Andy Muschietti doing The Brave and the Bold, I don't think is going to have any connection to this at all. It's going to be, because it's the adaptation of that Grant Morrison storyline, which has nothing to do with anything that could happen in this film. And so, yeah, I think it's just, as we said before, just chalk it up to a loss. But how do we feel about Muschietti doing that, though? How do we feel about him making the transition to a Batman movie? Because the thing about Batman, unlike The Flash, is that I feel like you have to pick a style with Batman. There are all these different styles of Batman. There are all these different aesthetic choices that you must make with Batman. And it's not something you have to do for a Flash movie. So how do we feel about the style, Andy Muschietti's style, and what do you think he's going to choose? Which direction do you think he's going to go with his, when you look at like Nolan's Batman, you look at Matt Reeves' Batman, they all have a unique style. And what do you think he's going to do?
I feel like what he can do is the Morrison Batman, which we haven't seen on in cinema yet. Like you brought up, they're doing the storyline. They might as well go for the vibe and the aesthetics. It is comic booky. It pops, but you still got to have the appropriate level of gothic atmosphere. But it's like, when I think of Grant Morrison Batman, I think of the colors, at least from those comics, and that is the one thing we haven't seen in movies for Batman since the original TV show back in the day. And I think that would be kind of cool and radical if they could find some way to do that. But that might not be what he does. That's just what I would be okay with it, and I could see him being capable of it. Will he have a writer that will write a movie that would serve that sort of color palette and sort of like clarity? Maybe not. And maybe it's wrong to do Batman with clarity, because the only people who seem to because does Batman work in this movie for you? He's already played with 2 different schools of Batman in this one movie. Can he really show us something that we haven't seen yet? Maybe not.
Yeah, one would hope, because the thing about Muschietti is despite this film, I think he is a good director. I liked Mama. I liked the first It movie. The second It movie is okay. It's not as bad as this. And so he has the capability to be a great director, I think. And yeah, we will have to wait and see.
The man's come a long way. I remember when we went to Comic-Con in 2011 and you were in Hall H for all those awesome panels you were in while we were camped out in DC's room. But because he was up there with Del Toro to talk about Mama, I believe, and he was kind of, as I recall, he was getting a little prissy because no one had questions for him.
That's right. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That's funny. But yeah, he has come a long way. I mean, this guy went from like doing his like first feature film to doing like a dual Stephen King adaptations of Stephen King's like most popular work, and then now he's doing The Flash. So he's come a long way in a very small amount of time, and so one would hope that he um, doesn't become like just another one of the directors in like the DC stable, I guess.
Yeah, there's got to be something that is striking and indelible about the guy. So we'll have to see. It's farewell to Batfleck. It was lovely to see him in action again one last time, but I don't think I'm gonna really want to see this movie again. That's kind of where I was left, and that's too bad because we've been coaxed and edged with about what this Flash movie was going to be for so long. It's not as bad as when the letdown from Green Lantern, but it's close.
Mm-hmm.
What is your mentionable for this week?
Yeah, so my mentionable is sort of a rest in peace farewell to Cormac McCarthy. I'm a big McCarthy fan. I think of his 12 novels, I think I've read 9 of them. And I guess for my mentionable this week, I'll just say, go read. I think the obvious choice is go read Blood Meridian, which is great, which is amazing. But I'm going to say go read All the Pretty Horses, because that is my personal favorite of his. I think it's a little less bleak than Blood Meridian. Blood Meridian is pretty unrelenting. And so, yeah, I mean, rest in peace to Cormac McCarthy, and go read All the Pretty Horses, and don't watch the movie.
And I would say watch The Counselor and The Road. The Counselor is the one movie that he wrote, himself. It's a Ridley Scott joint, and it has some pretty wild performances in it, especially from Cameron Diaz. But it's a strange movie to to think about, like knowing like who the guy was who wrote it. And I haven't read nearly as many of his books as you have. I think I've only read like 3. And All the Pretty Horses was not one of them, because I was turned off by whatever that movie was. There's kissing in it, like, so there's more to his border, like trilogy in that way, where like, because they kind of seem just more like literary dramas than like the odyssey of horror that Blood Meridian and The Road were. So an interesting guy, and fuck yeah, who's Hollywood gonna adapt now? They've run out of. I guess Blood Meridian is supposedly gonna be done.
Yeah, that movie, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it, because that movie it's been in production at various places throughout the years. And the thing that people always say about it is like, it is the unfilmable book. Like it will be impossible to adapt. And I don't know if that's like quite the case, but the real question is, would it be possible to adapt well? And I don't know if that's a question I want the answer to.
Yeah, because we will always have the book. Always have the book. I decided to buy a new game for once, and I took a chance on Warhammer 40k bolt gun, that boomer shooter, as it's as the genre is called. Unfortunately, because I'm playing on Linux, it has issues playing the cutscenes for some reason, and I haven't gone into the guts of the code to make the cutscenes work. So I've just been playing the game, and the game itself is outstanding. It has a lot more in common with like Doom Eternal and Doom 2016 than it does a game from the 90s or a shooter of this era. But it's fun. You can slide the pixelation up and down, so you can go from like Doom level quality to Quake. But the gameplay itself is rapid fire, and it's very satisfying. And yeah, you just get to be the most like angry and insane space marine and just kill chaos a whole bunch with really fun guns. And it's worth the $20. I haven't gotten very far or deep into it, but in like 5-10 minute bursts, it's immensely satisfying.
That's what I hear. I'm a big fan of these, and I gotta check this out because the most recent one that I played, the most recent boomer shooter was the game Proteus. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah,
I installed it. I haven't played it yet. I need to get on.
yeah.
That's,
In the same vein, and very, very good also. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about this.
and I wish I could see these cutscenes because they look so fucking cool. It's that old pixel style of animation. It's good stuff. What's your pick of the week?
Yeah, pretty easy for me this week. I'm gonna say Lazarus Project. Go and seek it out. It's unique. It's interesting. I'm always a fan of these British shows that sort of migrate over to the U.S. eventually. So yeah, watch it if you can get your hands on it.
That's the problem. Because my pick of the week is more accessible. I'm gonna go with Extraction 2. That was fucking awesome. I was a lot more entertained by that than The Flash, which is a very sad thing to admit. But you know what? You could do worse in theaters, but I would recommend seeing this in theaters if you're going to see it at all. But if you don't want to be trapped with a bad movie or a movie that you might not be okay with, save it for the stream, people. But that kind of does it for us this week. We'll be, back next week. We're still kind of ironing out what we're going to do. It depends on what my local AMC will allow. But we'll provide that when the time comes. Thank you for watching, and have a good one, everybody.
Yep. See ya.